Greetings, everyone. This is Live Life Well TV host Robert Landau. We are back for another absolutely amazing, clearly astounding episode of Crazy Fun Facts. And I think you'll really like the topic for this episode. It's going to get you hungry. It might even send you flying to the supermarket or the bakery shop, or thinking about what you might order for dessert today, for lunch and or dinner. Because, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to touch upon the incredible apple pie for this episode. So get your fork or spoon and napkin ready. All right, here we go. And before we do, actually, we would like to acknowledge not one, but two websites. The first one is factslegend.org, and the second one is alltimelists.com. So here we go with apple pie. I'm already starting to drool. Apple pie, as if you didn't already know, happens to be the unofficial symbol of the United States, and needless to say, it also happens to be one of its signature comfort foods. Do you like apple pie? Have you ever made an apple pie? And if you do like apple pie, do you like to have it with anything? Right now, I'm thinking about a warm apple pie straight out of the oven, served with a scoop of delicious, delectable vanilla ice cream. Now, that's the way I like to have it. How do you like to have it? I can't hear you, so I'm just going to continue. The saying, as American as apple pie, describes things that represent the best of American culture. People use this expression when talking about things like blue jeans, baseball, and rock and roll music. According to the common consensus, apple pie is an invention of not the US, but England. It's almost a 600 years old food item. You know, I just now had this vision. I visited Germany when I was 13. And I can't remember the name of the castle, but this famous castle out in the country. It's white and it has spires on it. And you've seen photos of it. Maybe you've even been there. I think it's one of the most photographed castles in all of Germany. And in one room of this castle, when my parents and I took the tour, they pointed to an apple pie covered in saran wrap. And they said that pie was made when the castle was a real castle. Do you know how many years ago that would have been? And I don't remember how many years ago, but it was a good number. I think well before the 1930s, possibly well before the 1920s, way back even before that. That just goes to show you how enduring apple pie is. Not that we were offered a taste of said apple pie. If I had had just a little bit of it, I probably wouldn't have made it out there alive because it was so old and had been sitting there so long. But go figure. Some sources also say that the first pie was made in Egypt in 9,500 BC. The pie in that castle was not from then. Throughout the course of time, people have made modifications to this dessert item as per taste preferences. For example, earlier Americans liked apple pies that used to have a take-off crust. They first used to bake the apple in the crust and then remove the crust. Sugar and spices were added as per taste. I'm sorry. I don't know about you, but I think one of the coolest things about apple pie is the crust. When I used to eat a lot of it, and I kind of stay away from sugar now, although apple pies nowadays can also be made with other sweeteners that might be more natural. But when I was in the heyday of my apple pie eating, sometimes I would eat just the crust. But it's better when you have everything together. English apple pie recipes go back to the time of Chaucer. The 1381 recipe is the earliest known apple pie recipe in the world and lists the ingredients as good apples, good spices, figs, raisins, and pears. It's a pretty good combination. It wasn't until the 15th century that Dutch bakers transformed the crustless apple pie into the lattice style pastry that we commonly see and make today. The Pilgrim Fathers and early settlers brought their pie recipes with them to America, adapting to the ingredients and techniques available to them in the New World. Their first pies were based on berries and fruits pointed out to them by the native North Americans. The apple pie had to wait for the planting of European varieties brought across the Atlantic to become fruit-bearing apple trees, to be selected for their cooking qualities, as there were no native apples except crab apples, which yield very small and very sour fruit. That happened during the 17th and 18th centuries when the British, Dutch, and Swedes brought some apple varieties for good pies. And I say, thank God for that. There are American apple pie recipes, both manuscript and printed, from the 18th century, and it has since become, of course, a very, very popular dessert. America's first cookbook, American Cookery, includes not one, but two recipes for apple pie, neither claiming the roots of the recipe. By the turn of the 20th century, the pie had been established as a key part of American culture. Today, the apple pie is the most popular flavor in America, followed by pumpkin, chocolate, lemon, meringue, and cherry pies, according to something called the American Pie Council. Can you imagine what a wonderful thing it would be to be the CEO, to be the president, to be the treasurer of the American Pie Council? I didn't even know such a thing exists. The number of distinct varieties of apples grown in North America reached about 14,000 distinct varieties, and it reached that peak in the 1800s. Commercialization and taste preferences started to narrow this down as time goes on. There were about 2,500 grown in the US today, with only about 100 varieties of apples grown commercially. Making crust of the apple pie is quite tricky, as you might know. An ideal amount of flour and water has to be used to make the light and flaky crust that just about everybody loves. Some bakers use egg crusts to make it a bit richer in taste. So here are 12 surprising facts, because we sort of talked about the history as facts too, but how about closing this episode with this? 12 surprising facts about the McDonald's apple pie. Yes, we're going to talk about the McDonald's apple pie. Truly, surely, one of the most popular apple pies, most bought, most consumed apple pie on a daily basis in all of the USA. So, here are some crazy fun facts about the McDonald's apple pie. Did you know that it was McDonald's first dessert? Before the chocolate chip cookies, before McFlurry, before the ice cream cone and the ice cream sundaes, there was the McDonald's apple pie. It debuted back in 1968 and has been an unqualified hit ever since, both stomach pleasing wise and financially for McDonald's pleasing wise. The first apple pie ever served was in a McDonald's franchise located in Knoxville, Tennessee. It was run by Litton Cochran, Litton, last name Cochran, whose family is credited for inventing the McDonald's apple pie. According to WVLT in Knoxville, Cochran's wife baked 2 to 3 versions of the apple pie for 3 to 4 months. Cochran decided to market it in East Tennessee, and the rest is history. And here's another tidbit. The Cochran family also helped create Chicken McNuggets and the McRib too. Now, let me ask you something. How could you have lived without these all-important, crazy, fun facts? Aren't you glad you tuned into this episode? Of course you are. Did you know that the McDonald's apple pie used to be fried? Oh, yes, it used to be fried. If you're old enough, then you will likely remember when McDonald's apple pies were fried and not baked. The fast food giant switched from fried to baked in 1992 due to consumers becoming more health conscious. Needless to say, fans were not too happy with the change. They prefer taste over health, it seems. They agreed that the old flaky, crispy crust was far tastier when it was fried, which I can understand. An Idaho food supply distributor revealed in 2014 that he had saved a bunch of fried McDonald's apple pies from way back when. The pies somehow ended up in the hands of the owner of Greenspan's Grilled Cheese in Los Angeles, who began selling something called throwback apple pies. Although it was never officially confirmed if those pies were indeed the real deal, customers said they really tasted like the original. I just wonder how much time passed between, if they were the original, between those pies were originally fried and the time that they were resold in that separate venue. Makes one wonder. The McDonald's apple pie happens to be baked fresh daily. Yes, McDonald's burgers, at least most of them anyway, and fries are cooked from frozen, but that doesn't mean that everything at a McDonald's is. In fact, according to its website, their apple pies are baked fresh daily and served warm. It's made with 6 different kinds of apples. I think that's pretty cool. McDonald's beloved apple pie is made with these varieties of apples: Fuji, Gala, Golden Delicious, Ida Red, Jonagold, and Rome. And guess what? They're all hand-picked and are 100% American grown from multi-generational family farmers. Kudos to you, McDonald's. That's wonderful. The apples they use vary by season, but the fast food giant always uses some combination of the varieties that were mentioned. So there you go. A lot of crazy fun facts that you probably didn't previously know about the great American apple pie. So we got the history in, we got the McDonald's aspect in. Now it's up to you, and I'll give you 1 or 2 choices to do. Go now and bake the best apple pie ever, or go now and find an apple pie that you can eat, which might also just be the best apple pie ever. Ain't life grand? I want to thank you for tuning in. I had fun. Did you? I'm kind of hungry now, to say the least, but In lieu of that, despite that, this has been Robert Landau, Live Life Well TV host. Thank you so much for tuning in.